Short Story 76, The Great Pie Caper of Penelope Plum. Penelope Plum was not your average 13-year-old. While other girls swooned over pop stars and daydreamed about unicorns, Penelope's heart belonged to pastry. Not just any pastry, mind you, but the humble, magnificent pie. In Penelope's eyes, a well-baked pie was a symphony of buttery crust, sweet or savoury filling, and the kind of golden crust that begged to be shattered with a spoon. One crisp autumn morning, Penelope awoke with a mission. The annual Bumblebrook Bake-Off, the village's most prestigious culinary competition, loomed just 2 days away. This year, Penelope was determined to win the coveted golden rolling pin trophy. Currently residing in the dusty cabinet of her nemesis, Mildred Muffintop, whose scones, Penelope privately believed, had the texture of stale bricks. Her weapon of choice? A daring creation she called the autumnal explosion pie. Imagine, if you will, a flaky crust cradling a vibrant melody of apples, pears, plums, and a touch of cinnamon, all bathed in a honey caramel glaze. It was a pie to make angels weep, or at least judges drool. But alas, Penelope's path to pie-tastic glory was not paved with flour and sugar. As she gathered her ingredients, fate, or perhaps a mischievous squirrel, intervened. A rogue gust of wind snatched her recipe, sending the precious parchment fluttering into the open sky. Penelope watched in horror as it landed not in the rose bushes, nor the compost heap, but on the head of Reginald, the village's most notoriously grumpy pigeon. Reginald, a creature who viewed humans with the same suspicion one reserves for day-old bread, took one look at the recipe and promptly tucked it into his feathery bosom. Penelope, ever the diplomat, especially when faced with creatures with sharp beaks and even sharper tempers, engaged in negotiations. She offered Reginald crumbs, sunflower seeds, even a slightly stale croissant, a peace offering she wouldn't dare inflict on any human. Reginald, however, remained unmoved. His beady eyes glinted with a challenge. Penelope, fueled by pie-induced desperation, hatched a plan. She spent the afternoon constructing a contraption worthy of Rube Goldberg himself. A series of pulleys, levers, and strategically placed birdseed feeders, all rigged to culminate in Reginald's favourite scratching post, awaited the grumpy avian. The bait? The recipe, delicately attached to a string leading directly to the post. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Penelope set her trap, and wouldn't you know it, just as the first stars twinkled in the twilight, Reginald strutted into view. He eyed the contraption with suspicion. Then, his greed from scratches overcoming his better judgment, launched himself into the series of contraptions. Penelope watched, breath held, as Reginald bounced, pecked, and scratched his way closer and closer to the post. Finally, with a triumphant squawk, Reginald landed on the post, the recipe fluttering triumphantly in his wake. Penelope, overjoyed, retrieved her precious parchment and scurried back to her kitchen. The clock was ticking, but fueled by adrenaline and the promise of pie perfection, Penelope worked through the night. The next morning, the Bumblebrook Bake-Off buzzed with excitement. Judges sniffed, tasted, and scribbled notes. When Penelope presented her autumnal explosion pie, a hush fell over the crowd. The golden crust glistened, the filling bubbled enticingly, and the aroma alone could induce pastry-induced swoons. The judges took their first bites, their eyes widening. Murmurs turned to gasps, gasps to applause. Penelope held her breath. Then the head judge, a woman with a handlebar moustache and a penchant for lemon meringue, declared Penelope Plum the winner. The crowd erupted, and even Reginald, perched on the trophy table, having developed a surprise fondness for Penelope's crumbs, seemed to crack a smile. Or perhaps it was just a particularly satisfying preen. Penelope's pie, a masterpiece born from chaos and a grumpy pigeon's intervention, was a testament to the power of perseverance, a little ingenuity, and a lot of love for pastry. And so the legend of Penelope Plum, the pie whisperer, was born. And Reginald, well, he became her unlikely sidekick, forever bound by the memory of a stolen recipe, a series of ingenious contraptions, and a pie that would forever hold a special place in both their hearts, even if Reginald still refused to admit in anything other than disgruntled cooing. With her golden rolling pin trophy proudly displayed in the kitchen, Penelope's life became a whirlwind of pipe making. Orders flooded in from Bumblebrook and beyond, each one a delicious challenge. She created the spiced squash symphony, a savoury delight with a buttery crust and a creamy butternut squash filling. Then came the midnight berry dream, a light and fluffy masterpiece, bursting with raspberries, blueberries, and a hint of lavender. With each pie, Penelope's reputation grew, and her kitchen became a haven for pastry lovers and Reginald, who, despite his gruff exterior, secretly enjoyed the delectable crumbs and the constant stream of visitors. One sunny afternoon, while kneading dough for her latest creation, the tropical tango, Penelope received an unexpected visitor. Mildred Muffintop, her scone-wielding rival, stood at the doorstep, an uncharacteristic sheepishness on her face. "Penelope," she mumbled, "I need your help." It turned out Mildred's scones, the very cornerstone of her baking empire, had started, disintegrating. She tried everything, new recipes, ancient incantations, even sacrificing a particularly stale tea cake to the baking gods, but nothing worked. Penelope, always a baker at heart, couldn't refuse a fellow pastry enthusiast in distress. So, with Reginald perched on her shoulder, offering unhelpful commentary through disgruntled squawks, Penelope entered Mildred's kitchen. What she found was a scene of culinary carnage. Dough stuck to walls, ovens spewing smoke, and the air thick with the scent of burnt flour. Penelope took a deep breath, surveyed the disaster, and got to work. Hours later, the kitchen was transformed. The oven hummed contentedly, the air fragrant with warm cinnamon and vanilla. Penelope emerged, flour-dusted but triumphant, with a tray of scones unlike any Mildred had ever seen. Light, fluffy, and infused with a hint of Penelope's secret ingredient. A touch of nutmeg borrowed from Reginald's stash, acquired, of course, entirely by accident. Mildred took a bite. Her eyes widened. It was a revelation. The scone melted in her mouth. A perfect balance of sweetness and spice. "Penelope, you're a genius!" she exclaimed, tears welling up in her eyes. From the scone's deliciousness, not Mildred's usual baking frustrations. And so an unlikely friendship blossomed. Penelope and Mildred, the pie queen and the scone sorceress, became the most celebrated bakers in Bumblebrook. They even co-created a masterpiece, the Penelope and Mildred pastry puzzle, a pie with a scone crust and a filling featuring both sweet and savoury flavours. Reginald, of course, became their official taste tester, grumpily approving each creation with a well-placed feather puff. In the end, Penelope's story wasn't just about pies or trophies, it was about the magic that happens when passion meets perseverance. Unlikely friendships overcome rivalry, and even a grumpy pigeon learns to appreciate the finer things in life, like the occasional perfect crumb. And that, dear reader, is a recipe for happiness, worth celebrating, one delicious bite at a time. Vocabulary notes. Swooned, fainted or almost fainted, typically from extreme emotions such as pleasure or love. Symphony, a musical composition for an orchestra, especially one of large scale and complex structure. Bathed, immersed or soaked completely in a liquid. Contraption, a complex or awkward mechanical device. Barbed, having sharp points or bristles. Handlebar moustache, a long thick moustache twisted upward at the ends, resembling handlebars. Lemon meringue, a dessert consisting of a baked pastry shell filled with lemon custard and topped with meringue. Butternut squash, a large orange-coloured winter squash with a sweet nutty flavour. Lavender, a fragrant purple flowering plant used in cooking, medicine and perfume. Crumbling, breaking or falling apart into small pieces. Incantations, words or phrases spoken as part of a magic spell or ritual. Nutmeg, a spice ground from the dried seed of the nutmeg tree with a warm, sweet flavour. Glitch, a sudden temporary malfunction in a computer's program or system. Story written by Google Bard AI. Image created by Bing.com AI. Hello, this is Steve. If you enjoyed the story, please would you click on the like icon and take the time to leave a comment. If you want to know when the next story has been uploaded, please click on the notify bell icon to be notified. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and tell your English learning friends so they can benefit too. Thank you.